Okay, so as I completed parent conferences this second half of the school year, I really tried to focus on hearing my parents and families of my students express their needs and their thoughts and their opinions on how I could improve and what their needs were and how to help their students be more successful. Rather than in the past, I've kind of followed the model that our school typically has, which is going over data and giving parents graphs where it shows their students compared to the rest of the class. But my previous experience has shown me that that's been more disheartening rather than empowering for a lot of my families. And so this time I really wanted to talk with them one-on-one about how to help their students. And the first experience I want to talk about is from one of my students. Her family came here from Africa a few years ago, and I was speaking with her mother about how this student had made great progress, but she was still struggling with a lot of her letters and sounds. And her mom explained to me that she can't work with her at home because she works all the time. She said that there's really not a time when she's home with her children because she's just working all of the time to provide for them. And so it was really powerful after that. She just kept begging me to help with her, to help her and to do what I could. And so I assured her that I would, and we talked about how my aide and I could provide some one-on-one help. And after having that discussion with her, I kind of better understood the need that I needed to step up as an educator and work alongside this parent to help with educating her child better. And actually one of the siblings of this student who's in second grade volunteered to help as well. And so we talked about different resources that the student could use to help with that. And since then I've spent a lot more time focusing on this student. She is one of my McKinney-Vento children, but because she doesn't have some of the severe behaviors that some of my other students have exhibited, I realized after this conference that I'd kind of been overlooking her. And so in the months since then, I've really focused on taking extra time with her and working with her, and she actually knows most of her letters and sounds now. But I don't think that I would have taken that initiative had I not heard from her mom that perspective. And so that kind of humbled me as an educator because that helped me to realize that I had been prejudging this family and I didn't understand the situation until I heard it from her mom. And actually going along with that, I've spent more time talking one-on-one with this student and trying to foster a relationship with her. And one thing, last Friday she earned having lunch with me in the classroom, and so we were talking, and she explained to me, she said, quote, "My dad doesn't live with us anymore because my mom doesn't want him around us because he goes out and fights people. Once he punched a Mexican." And then she went on to talk about her older brother and how he's left, and I could tell she was getting emotional. She didn't cry, but I could tell that it was something that was really challenging and impactful for her. And so hearing her mom's perspective and then later her perspective gave me a better glimpse into their family situation, and it helped me to again realize that I need to take the time to understand where my parents and my students are coming from so that I can better meet their needs. It goes along with what Gallo and Link say on page 358 of the reading, that the children they were doing their study with were searching for spaces to talk and write about their powerful experiences with caring adults. And I realized in doing the conferences and then incorporating that feedback afterwards that there are a lot of components to this. It takes creating a relationship with families and students so they both feel comfortable sharing pieces of their home life. The second student I want to talk about is an African American as well. Her mom was talking with me at the conference, and we were talking about how her mom was in the middle of a really high-risk pregnancy and how that was causing some stress at home. And this student is an only child, and so her mom expressed that she thought that the birth of the baby brother would be a really good way to help her to improve in her behavior. And I'm kind of ashamed to admit that when she said that, I questioned it. I didn't think that, I was figuring that the birth of the baby would escalate her behavior and make her more attention-seeking. But I tried to incorporate that feedback and suggestion from her mom to use the baby brother as motivation and kind of a guideline for teaching the student responsibility. And so since then, anytime that she's been off task or misbehaving, I've tried to relate it back to what I know is being reinforced at home of, is this going to help you be a good example for baby brother? Is this how you want to set an example? And baby brother was born a week ago, and this student's behavior has actually been really, really well. She's been doing really well. And so, again, this experience taught me that parents really do have the best perspective when it comes to how to help their children. And one other thing I want to talk about is just an overarching need I heard as I did my parent conferences was parents expressing that they did not have access to resources to help their children with reading. Most of my students are at the point in the year now where they are familiar enough with the letters and sounds that they're starting to blend words and read, but parents across the board expressed that they did not have access to books to practice reading. And so I took that feedback and created a take-home library where students could take home books and read them. And in there I also put a paper to kind of guide families and help them to know how to assist their child with sounding out CVC words or simply memorizing sight words, because that was another thing that a lot of parents brought up to me, was that they didn't know how to teach their children how to read when it was words such as R that are not read the way that they're phonetically written. And again, that was humbling for me because I forget that they do not have the training that I do in terms of the reading processes, and so it was valuable for me to remember that I cannot expect my families of my students to do things if I haven't provided them the tools to be able to. And so that's been a really beneficial experience as well, getting that started and hearing that feedback. And going into one last example, this actually reflects on just the whole idea of the Weiss reading on chronology and the chronosystem and how time really affects family relationships. In our first family or parent conferences back in the fall, the mother of one of my students told me about how her daughter was bilingual, and I actually didn't know that until the conference. I thought she just spoke English, but her mother explained that she does speak both English and Spanish. Her mother speaks English to her, and her father speaks Spanish to her. And so we kind of talked about how her mom really wanted her to use that throughout the classroom in the school year, but this student is very shy and reserved, and so we kind of talked about how we could help her throughout the year to come out of her shell. And there was a really cool experience last week. We read a story called Abuela, and in that story there are a lot of Spanish phrases, and I asked the student if she wanted to help explain what those phrases meant to the class, and she did, and so she was able to stand up and teach her peers about the different phrases in Spanish, and it was really cool to see her take that leadership and to see the students really have that respect for that aspect of her life and her culture, and they wanted to know more about it, and I could tell that it increased her confidence being able to stand up and teach the other students about her native language. And again, this is something that I would not have been able to use in the classroom and to tie to her learning had I not had that initial input from her mother and that continued discussion throughout the school year of how to help her daughter be more confident. And so just going into the future, one of the things that I really want to use from the readings, Gallo and Link talked on pages 360 to 361 about how they pushed educators to step outside of their classrooms into students' homes and communities, to take on the role of ethnographers who learn from students in order to design and implement classroom curricula. I wrote in one of my previous action plans about how I visited the homeless shelter that some of my students live in. And I've also had the opportunity to conduct a home visit to one of my refugee students, but I still really want to go out into the community that all of my students live in to kind of get a better perspective on the surroundings that they have, and hopefully that will help me to learn how I can better incorporate that into my classroom. Because the readings really got me thinking about how cultural capital isn't something, it's something that all students come with. It's just a matter of what is valued in the classroom, and how a lot of times teachers tend to view students from a deficit perspective because they don't necessarily have the cultural capital that is valued in the contemporary American society. But after completing the Yoso readings, I've realized a lot more how every single student who comes into my classroom has an immense amount of capital, whether that's linguistic or aspirational or social, or really likely a combination of all of them. And so I really want to come up with ways that I can create a classroom that moves beyond simply the typical American capital, but values all of that. And I think that probably the best way to sum up everything is just a quote that I really liked from the readings, where it says that change requires more than words on a page. It takes perseverance, creativity, ingenuity, and acts of love. And if anything, I think that the parent conferences and kind of taking that feedback from parents has really helped me to realize that as an educator, I need to continually persevere, and even when it's hard to create relationships with families and step out of my comfort zone, I need to be willing to do that, because that's how change is going to happen. I can't just sit here and write about how I want to change things. I have to be willing to actually go out and do it.